right, so this is tonight's homework. All you need to do for this is sort of write down what I'm writing, which shouldn't be a whole lot. It shouldn't be too bad for you. So go ahead, please, and write 3 parentheses 2 plus 5 twice with a line in between them on your paper. 3 with parentheses, just like on the screen. Right, what's on the screen? This is called the distributive property. That's what we're working on. So before we introduce the distributive property, let's just talk about the way that we normally do parentheses. In the order of operations, would we multiply here, or would we add first? Yeah, we would. What's 5 plus 2?
7.
And because we always do parentheses first, then we would do 3 times 7 and get
21.
21. So we got 21. There is actually another way, and I spoke with some of the groups about this the other day. There's really another way to do this. And if you'll go above this right here and write the distributive property, that's what we call the other way to do it. It's called the distributive property. Let me find my mouse. Oh, pen's messing me up. Okay. The distributive property is another way to do this. So just bear with me because it's going to be a little weird for a second, but I'm going to explain why we're doing it. Here we added. We did parentheses, then we multiplied. You can actually multiply first and then add. But you've got to do what we call distributing. You've got to distribute. Now, does anyone know what distribute just means in general? Like if I had a stack of papers, yeah, if I had a stack of papers and I was going to distribute them, I'd be handing them out. Well, distributive property is when you take this 3 and you sort of pass it out to both of these numbers. So instead of adding and multiplying, we're going to multiply first. What's 3 times 2?
6.
What's 3 times 5?
15.
6 plus 15 is? 21. So we get the same answer both ways. This is the normal way that you've always done it. This is the distributive property way. Any questions about that so far? Now, which way looks the easiest to you?
The first one.
Yeah, this is by far to me the easiest way to do this problem. So on this kind of problem with just numbers, you really don't use the distributive property. Let me pause the video and put up a different problem though. All right, here's the kind of problem we're going to use the distributive property on. Now, you've learned during our combining like terms lessons, you've learned that, can we put 2x with 5? No. 5 would have to have what after it in order to do that? An x, and it doesn't. So we can't get rid of this parentheses by adding. Because you can add 2x plus 5. It's impossible. Not until we know what x is. But remember the distributive property?
Yeah.
You can still distribute this 3. And I know some of you probably are thinking, oh, I don't know how to do 3 times 2x. And actually, that's not that bad. That just means we have 2x how many times?
3 times.
So if I do this 3 times, how many x's is that?
6.
6x. 3 times 2x is 6 x's. 3 times 5 is? And I just got rid of the parentheses without actually adding. I just distributed. I multiplied. So there's one example. Any questions about that?
No.
All right, here's another quick example.
Are you going to pause it?
So I'm just going to clone this. I'm just going to change a couple of things. Let's just do 2x minus. So almost the same problem. Just continue to copy what I copied. If you need to pause the video, pause the video. Same thing. Can I do 2x minus 5? No. So how do I get rid of the parentheses?
You multiply 3 times 2x and 3 times 5.
Yep, we distribute. 3 times 2x is?
6x.
3 times 2 is 6. That makes 6 x's. And you got to also think that this is a negative 5.
So it's minus.
What's a positive times a negative?
A negative.
3 times 5 is?
15.
And we've gotten rid of the parentheses. Any questions? Anything at all?
Nope.
All right, we're getting close to being done. Just another couple of examples. All right, so let's make it just a little more confusing for you, just because it gets more confusing. We're going to change this just a little bit. Here's what's going to be different. I'm going to make that 3 a negative, because that does sometimes happen. Now, all you have to do is use your integer rules. If the signs are the same, the answer is?
Positive.
If they're different, the answer is?
Negative.
So same's positive, difference negative. And, you know, as you're doing these problems, I would try them on my own, but then check with the calculator. Make sure you did that part right. So let's distribute. The biggest mistake people make is they just multiply the first two and then they just bring down the 5. But you've got to multiply to both. What's a negative times a negative?
Positive.
So 3 times 2x is?
6x.
And it's positive because they're the same sign. What's a negative times a positive?
Negative.
So we have to be minus. 3 times 5 is?
15.
15. If people are going to mess this up, it's usually this kind of problem. They'll forget to make that a negative. But always remember, you've got to always check your signs. This is a negative, that's a positive, that makes a negative. Any questions? All right. So here's what this looks like in a problem. We'll have some problems that are just like that, just the very basic distributive property problems. But also we'll have problems like this. So I'm going to add a 5x plus negative 2 plus that. This is what the problems look like. So this is what you really need to watch. We're going to practice some just distributed, but I want to go ahead and introduce this because we also need to be able to do this. In the order of operations, what would come first in this problem? The addition, parentheses. But can I add these two?
No, so you multiply 3 times 2 and then 3 times 5.
So a lot of times what we do is we do the distributive property in another problem. Now, was this 5x touching the parentheses?
No.
No, we just bring that down. What about the negative 2?
No. We'll leave it in there.
Sorry about that. Plus the negative 2?
Need to put that.
Thank you. Now we're multiplying. So what's a positive times a negative?
Negative.
3 times 2x is?
Negative 6x.
What's a positive 3 times a positive 5?
Positive 15.
And 3 times 5 is?
15.
Any questions?
No.
Peter?
Can't we just add 5x plus negative 2 plus negative 6x?
That's what we're about to do. You can't, the big mistake people make is they add this with this. But because the 2x, the negative 2 is in parentheses, you can't do that. But when you said do it with the negative 6, you were right. That's what we're going to do. Once we clear parentheses, just like Peter said, now we can combine our like terms. What's 5x plus negative 6x?
11x.
Well, they're different signs. What do we do in the different?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. So I just put negative x. We know there's a 1 if we don't put it. Then we have a negative 2. Are there any like terms with negative 2?
15.
Negative 2 plus 15 is?
17.
Positive 13. They're different, so we subtract. That would be the simplified form of this problem. Are there any questions? So hopefully by the time you get here in class tomorrow, you'll understand how to do just the basic distribution. I'm expecting like all this big problem, I'm expecting that to take a lot more work.
You want us to write it down?
We're going to practice this sum in class, and then for those who get it, we'll start practicing this sum in class as well. So we'll do a little bit of both, but we'll start off with the easier stuff and work to the harder stuff. No questions? We're good?
Are we writing down the big problem?